Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Connor Hilton. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Connor Lynn Hilton was born in 2006 and lived in Friendswood, Texas. This city is a suburb of Houston. It is 22 miles to the southeast. His father, Neil, and his mother, Janice, divorced when he was young. Connor lived with his mother in a 2,700 square foot four-bedroom house on LaSalle Street. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On December 23, 2023, at 8:51 p.m., the police received a call from a 15-year-old male referred to in court documents as Sterling. He said that he heard 2 gunshots and was hiding in the bathroom of the Hilton family house on LaSalle Street. Sterling said, "I think the killer is still in the house. I don't know. He's my friend, though." When asked who had the gun, Sterling responded, "Connor Hilton." At 8:52 p.m., 1 minute after the 911 call was placed, the police arrived at the house. They encountered Connor sitting on the curb right near the walkway to his house. He said, "I screwed up so bad." The officer asked Connor if anyone was hurt. Connor nodded his head to signal in the affirmative. When he was asked who was hurt, he held up 2 fingers, motioned toward the house, and said there were 2 teenage males inside who he believed were deceased. The police entered the house and discovered 2 teenagers on the floor, 18-year-old Ethan Riley and 19-year-old Benjamin Bleak. They had each been shot 1 time in the head with a Taurus .856 revolver chambered in .38 Special. The weapon was on a table in the house. The men were transported to different hospitals. Connor was placed in the back of a police vehicle and implied that he acted in self-defense. He said, "We got into an argument. Ethan tried to come at me and I freaked out. He tried to grab my throat." After this, Connor was transported to a police station. Officers started interviewing him at 12:38 a.m., now on December 24, 2023, Christmas Eve. Here is what Connor told investigators. Referring to the revolver, he said, "I had it in my hand. I was just standing next to Ethan. I heard it go off. My blanking idiot self had the stupid finger on the trigger." Investigators pointed out that this was difficult to believe because the weapon had been fired twice. Connor made a major adjustment to his story. He explained that for a long time he had been thinking about committing homicide. He said, quote, "I know it's going to sound really like psychopathic and just like straight up disgusting and just weird, but the idea of murder is just super interesting for me. I don't know why. I don't know why. It is. I don't know why," unquote. Connor claimed he had access to the revolver because he convinced his mother to purchase the weapon for him. The firearm was purchased in November 2023. On the night of the shooting, Ethan and Benjamin arrived together at the Hilton family house. Connor also called Sterling and asked him to come over. Again, this is the 15-year-old who called the police from the bathroom. Connor showed his revolver to all 3 of his friends. At this point, he decided to shoot them. Connor stood up, raised the revolver, and shot Ethan in the left side of the head. He then turned to his right and shot Benjamin in the left side of the head. Benjamin raised his hands in a defensive manner right before Connor pulled the trigger. Even though it was part of the original plan, Connor decided not to shoot Sterling because he was in the bathroom and Connor believed it was too risky to shoot through the door. He said, quote, "I'm so glad that he closed the door and I didn't kill him," unquote. Connor told investigators that he understood the difference between right and wrong, should be held accountable, and needed mental health treatment. He was charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault with serious bodily injury and released on a $600,000 bond. Later that same day, Christmas Eve, Ethan Riley died in the hospital. The police showed up at the Hilton family house and dramatically rearrested Connor after he received an upgrade to murder. He was once again released on bond. This time it was $1 million. In August 2025, not long before Connor's trial was scheduled to begin, his attorneys argued that he shot his friends because he was taking a medication called Accutane. This is used to treat acne. Potential side effects of the medication include psychosis, violent behavior, and depression. Ultimately, the judge decided not to permit this defense strategy at trial, although it would be permitted at sentencing in the event Connor was found guilty. Faced with no good options to defend himself at trial, Connor Hilton accepted a plea bargain. He claimed it was to protect the family members of his victims from going through the trial, but it was almost certainly because he did not want to risk being sentenced to a term of life in prison. On September 2, 2025, Connor Hilton pleaded guilty to murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison with parole eligibility in 25 years. He will first be eligible for parole on August 22, 2050, at the age of 43. The criminal component of this case was concluded, but Ethan's family sued Connor's mother, Janice. As I mentioned, Connor claimed that his mother purchased the revolver for him. During an interview with the police right after the shooting, Janice corroborated Connor's account, saying that she purchased him the gun because he wanted it. Furthermore, text messages between Connor and his mother showed that Connor selected the specific revolver he wanted. Later, Janice changed her story and claimed that she bought the revolver for herself. The weapon was kept in a safe and Connor was not supposed to have access to it. In the civil trial, Janice was also accused of purchasing marijuana for Connor and hosting gatherings where alcohol was available for Connor and for his friends. Janice defended her decision to supply Connor with marijuana, claiming it was to help him with his depression and anxiety. In February 2026, a jury found that Janice Hilton was negligent for purchasing the revolver for Connor, buying him marijuana, and hosting parties where alcohol was available. The family of Ethan Riley was awarded $60 million. Now moving to my analysis. Connor Hilton was disappointed that his acne medication defense was not allowed at trial. Here is the argument put forth by his attorneys. Connor started taking Accutane in July 2022, but stopped not long after this due to feelings of depression. He also claimed that he had homicidal thoughts. However, conveniently, he failed to mention that to anyone at the time, saying he did not want to be thought of as mentally ill. Connor stopped taking the medication and claimed the homicidal thoughts disappeared. In January 2023, he resumed Accutane at a lower dosage. He claimed the homicidal thoughts returned and were active leading up to the shooting. Some of Connor's friends said they noticed that his behavior changed when he was on Accutane. For example, he wanted to be a homicide detective, became increasingly isolated, and felt an increased interest in true crime. The acne medication defense is certainly creative, but Connor would probably still have been convicted at trial. There is no research tying the drug to homicide, and Connor had mental health difficulties prior to taking the drug. For instance, he was depressed and took Prozac. One key idea behind Connor's defense strategy is rooted in the theory that Accutane causes homicidal thoughts. Even if this was true, it is not sufficient to explain Connor's behavior. A lot of people have homicidal thoughts and never act on them. Another important idea was that the medication caused psychosis. The problem here is that no one noticed psychotic behavior before or after the shooting. Connor appeared to have a good grasp on reality. He never mentioned anything that could be tied to hallucinations or delusions. I think what happened here is that Connor had no plausible defense available, so his parents and his attorneys promoted this nonsense about the acne medication. They were just reaching for anything they could possibly use to defend him. Now moving to the next question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Connor Hilton was self-centered, grandiose, arrogant, impulsive, irresponsible, cold, callous, reckless, determined, sensation-seeking, nefarious, falsely believed he was special, was unable to regulate his emotions, had a sense of entitlement, and was moderately creepy. He had big plans for his future, telling people he wanted to be important and leave a legacy. At some point, Connor developed an intense desire to murder someone. He simply wanted to know what this felt like. This desire had nothing to do with medication. Connor made statements about killing people, posted disturbing messages on social media, and watched YouTube videos about murder. One post included the lyrics, "Murder one, better run. Killing plenty is so fun." The intense desire to kill explanation can be very unsatisfying to many people. It seems like this reason is assigned in cases where the real motive for a murder is concealed. Killers often act on well-known motives like jealousy, money, revenge, or anger. If the reason for murder is elusive and doesn't fall into one of these categories, the intense desire to murder label is sometimes slapped on it, and that's the end of it. This provides a sense that the mystery is solved, which eases anxiety, even though the wrong motive may have been attributed. I think that sometimes this intense desire to kill explanation is used improperly like this, but in the case of Connor Hilton, it is the best explanation, at least in my opinion. This isn't a made-up concept, it's a motive that appears in the research, typically classified under a thrill or hedonistic killing. Connor felt this seemingly irresistible urge, a powerful pressure, and he was unwilling to abandon the idea of homicide. He just wanted to know what it felt like to kill. This is not the first murder case to involve an irresistible homicidal urge. I have noticed that much of the time when killers feel this way, they want to stab somebody, not shoot them, like they're looking for something they consider intimate. However, there are shooting cases out there as well. When Connor made his decision to commit homicide, he knew there would be consequences, but he was so focused on murder, he didn't even worry about prison. After the shooting, he was forced to consider his next step. Many of Connor's actions after this appeared to show remorse. For example, Sterling heard Connor crying and asking, "What have I done? What have I done?" After being handcuffed outside his house, Connor asked, "Why did I do this?" Later, he made other statements like, "I'm going to hell," and "I'm so evil." At many steps along his journey through the criminal justice system, Connor had difficulty regulating his emotions. He constantly whined and cried. It seemed like every time he was in front of a camera, he was downright hysterical. Crying was his default operating mode. This behavior became so pronounced, many people were annoyed. For instance, when Ben testified at Connor's sentencing, he spoke directly to Connor saying, quote, "Stop sniveling, stop crying. You did this to yourself," unquote. Some people believe that Connor is faking it and he does not have true remorse. That is certainly possible. However, the strong desire to kill motive and remorse are not mutually exclusive. Connor did not shoot his friends because he hated them. Rather, he was trying to obtain an intense feeling. Chasing that feeling was more valuable to Connor than his freedom. But in a perfect world, he wanted both. Connor wanted to kill and be prison-free in 23. In Connor's mind, there is a distinction between the act of killing and wanting somebody to be dead. Those constructs are separate. Most people who commit murder do so because they want the victim to be dead. In Connor's case, the act of killing is all that he wanted. If he could bring Ethan back from the dead, I imagine he would. Even if Connor was remorseful, I don't believe his confession came from a place of regret. He did not confess to accept responsibility. He did it to feel good, to satisfy yet another urge. He was looking for a sense of relief. During his interview, he expressed that he was very relieved after his confession. This behavior is telling and does not predict a positive outcome. Connor's extremely high level of impulsivity is something that should be considered when he comes up for parole. If he gets out at the age of 43, Connor will have plenty of time to make other disastrous choices without thinking. Now moving to my final thoughts. Some of the blame in this case falls on Connor's mother, Janice. Why did a 17-year-old need a revolver? If she was giving Connor marijuana to treat depression and anxiety, as she claimed, this is even more reason he should not have a firearm. As if these reasons are not strong enough, Connor was posting on social media about murder. It appears as though Connor wasn't the only one who was reckless. Maybe his mother passed that down to him, just like the affinity for crying and whining. Those are my thoughts on the case of Connor Hilton. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.